What's up, Creed? We are seriously super excited to unveil this brand new lift called the ZERCHER deadlift. And so I know some of you guys maybe have done a little bit of research and looked up some technique videos. And I'm not gonna lie, from the outset, this lift may intimidate or scare some of you guys because in a really good way, you have been taught to never allow your spine to bend at all anytime you have your hands on a barbell. However, for the ZERCHER deadlift and a few of the other variations, we know that the body adapts to whatever stimuli that we throw at it. So of course, if you have never trained your spine out of this neutral position, then those types of things are gonna be pretty scary for you. But since we know that the body adapts, as you slowly start to introduce more and more stimulus on things like even bending laterally or getting into spinal flexion where you're kind of bending forward, or spinal extension where you're going the other way. In the same way that I would not step up to a barbell for like a barbell deadlift on my very first day ever touching the bar and do a 1 rep max, I would encourage you guys in this new strength cycle on weeks 1, 2, and maybe even as we get into week 3, don't feel like you have to like really push the limit on this one. So it's really just getting used to the movement and also just mentally getting yourself comfortable loading that spinal flexion to where you start to feel more competent and confident in those in ranges of motion in terms of the start and the end of this lift. If you've ever had lower back pain in the past, I would be willing to bet, if it was not some sort of contact injury like getting in a serious car crash, that lower back pain came from either being weak in the structures around the spine or maybe lacking mobility or flexibility in things like your hamstrings, around the hip joint, or the muscles around your spine itself. Like I was saying, we're gonna take a gradual approach to this, and in this cycle, we're gonna be introducing more range of motion in things like bending laterally. We always throw in things like the medicine ball spine circles, and with the introduction of the brand new sandbags that is also gonna be in this cycle. All of these things are gonna combine in like a really cool way to where we build like a holistic approach to building up these structures around our lower back. Our coaches will go over the technique. They'll kind of give you, not only in weeks 1 and 2, like the overall setup for the lift, but in later weeks, even some more kind of main cues of the day to be thinking about. But in general, when you think about your stance width, you have what's called our conventional stance that you would do for like a conventional barbell deadlift. And then you have what's called the sumo stance, where it's significantly wider. When you go for the ZERCHER deadlift, I kind of like to be in between those two stances. In terms of gripping the bar is gonna be in the crook of your elbow. There's a couple different ways to hold your hands, and the coaches in each one of the group class will kind of give you some specific options for that. An awesome thing about any lifts in the ZERCHER position, that just means that the bar is resting in the crook of your elbow. You can do things like squats, deadlifts like we're gonna do in this. You can do carries, shrugs. There's multiple different things you can do in that ZERCHER position. But an awesome thing about that is it's kind of self-limiting in the sense that you're not gonna be able to go super heavy as you still kind of build up the tolerance to holding weight in the crook of your elbow. If you kind of think back to, say the first time you ever did a barbell back squat, or we'll use the barbell front squat, for example. Almost anyone I coach, the very first time they try a front squat, whether they're doing the zombie variation, maybe the arms crossed, or if they're mobile enough to get in the front rack, 10 out of 10 people just kind of have this like uncomfortable look on their face, like, oh, this like doesn't feel right. It's kind of resting on my collarbone. Do I shrug my shoulders? Do I bring them down? There's just so many different variables there, and people typically feel pretty uncomfortable in it. Does that mean that the front squat, or even like the first time someone puts a bar on their back, does that mean those positions are bad just because they're uncomfortable? Absolutely not. It just takes a little bit to get used to those positions. The ZERCHER is the same exact thing. I would be willing to bet if you stick with this by week 3 or 4, specifically in terms of like putting the bar in the crook of your elbow, you're just gonna get used to it, and that's gonna become like a non-factor in terms of that. When we set up and actually get our arms underneath the bar, the awesome thing about the ZERCHER deadlift, compared to some more of the traditional lifts where there's like kind of a one size fits all in terms of like when I watch someone do a barbell back squat, there are some main points that I know everyone needs to, or main boxes that I know everyone needs to tick. However, in the ZERCHER deadlift, this is, I would go so far as to say the lift with the most variability between each individual person that does this lift. So it comes in many different shapes and sizes, and your body is gonna kind of naturally get in the position not only where it has the most leverage, but wherever it feels the safest and most confident. Most people though typically like to start with their hips really high, but depending on a couple different things like how mobile you are in your hips, how flexible your hamstrings are, how comfortable you are with spinal flexion, a lot of those things will dictate kind of that starting position. Our coaches will go over some scaling options in terms of both loading the bar up and if you want to elevate the bumpers at all. However, I would recommend, even if it feels a little bit uncomfortable or scary pulling the bar from the floor, stick with it for the first couple weeks rather than immediately running to the scaling options, the first of which would be elevating it on some bumpers or going to the free weight option. I would stick with, even if it means that you have to do the training bar with 10-pound bumpers on the side, really try to train through that full range of motion. In the same way, if I were learning how to do a barbell back squat for the first time, if I'm only able to squat a quarter of the way down, I'm not immediately gonna start adding load to the bar. Before I start to adding the load to the bar, what do you think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna add in some more range of motion until I can get to or past parallel. And then once my body gets comfortable in those in ranges, that would be where I would start to add some load. So the same thing applies here. If you kind of try it on the first few sets and it doesn't feel quite right, just stick with it, but stay with that lighter load rather than immediately just trying to find all these like workarounds in order to add more load to the bar. But if you have any of the questions, feel free to shoot me an email or a text or ask whoever's coaching your group class, especially in those first couple weeks. Also, kind of filming yourself from the side can be super helpful in some of the larger classes where you may not be able to get a ton of one-on-one time with the coach. But like I said, it is there's a lot of variability in this, so your body is going to naturally get in the position that it feels the strongest in. Just make sure you're getting some good breathing and bracing in before you lift off for that first rep. But we are fired up for this strength cycle. A lot of these things are going to combine and kind of stack on top of each other, especially for those of you competing in fall brawl. There's going to be some cool things coming that are all tied together in this strength cycle. So fired up for the next 6 weeks and hope to see you guys in class.